everybody! Guys, it's been a hot minute since we did a video about being a police wife. So let's talk about another aspect of being married to a cop. Today we're going to discuss the difference between being married to a corrections officer and being married to a law enforcement officer. Let's get started. Husband first started his career as a police officer, he began at a county jail. He was there for about 6 years, and after that time he moved over to the road to a major metropolitan city in our area and worked there for about 6 years as well. Now he works for a smaller county in our area, which is way less stressful and totally awesome. So I want to describe to you what the difference is between those two so that you kind of understand. A corrections officer is someone who works in a jail or a prison. Typically, they are not weapons certified. They do not carry a gun. What they have on their person to protect them within the jail is OC spray or like pepper spray, like a really intense pepper spray is what they have. Some corrections officers are weapons certified. Like if you're on the internal SWAT team within the jail, you'll be weapons certified. If you are one of the officers that goes and guards the prisoner while they are in the hospital, you've got to be weapons certified to do that. So there are some corrections officers that have that certification. My husband did not while he worked at the jail. Most corrections officers also do not have their tactical driving certification. So when you go to the road and you are driving a patrol car, there are specific things that you have to be trained in how to use the car and what laws apply to you and what laws don't as you're driving an emergency response vehicle, because the laws are different when you're driving that type of vehicle versus driving a private vehicle. Most people that are working corrections do not have certification for that either. Again, there are some positions. For example, if you are the guy that drives the big bus full of prisoners to go to their work detail, or maybe you are taking them to court appearances or something on that nature. So there are some officers that get trained to drive vehicles while they are corrections officers. Again, that was not my husband. He did not end up doing any of that training while he was within the jail. When you become a law enforcement officer, you're on the road, you have a lot more tools to use. One of them is obviously your gun. You also have a baton. You also have obviously your vehicle. You've got your car that you're using. You've got like the radar gun to check the speed, right? That kind of stuff. Those are things that obviously you don't need to use if you're working inside a jail or a prison. One thing that you use in the jail that they don't necessarily use as much on the road is they have shields, like big shields to go into the cells to do what's called a forced cell. If the prisoners are not being compliant, they can utilize those shields to get themselves in safely so that they can get the prisoner into compliance and keep everyone safe in that manner. They do use those types of shields occasionally when we're talking like riots and protests and things like that. They do have shields that are similar in nature, but for the most part, they don't get used as much. Those are the main differences between corrections officer and law enforcement officer. Now, I want to tell you the top 5 things that I experienced as a wife of a corrections officer versus a wife of a law enforcement officer, what those differences were. The first thing that I remember from when he worked at the jail was it was just kind of a normal job. It didn't come home with us. So when you are a corrections officer, you are a police officer. However, you only have authority as a police officer when you are clocked in at your facility that you work at, versus a law enforcement officer who is a peace officer, and that means they're a cop 24/7. And if something happens in front of you, you have to do something about it. Whereas if you're a corrections officer and you see something happening in front of you, but you're not at work, you don't have the authority to do anything about it. So it's really easy as a corrections officer to put work aside when you're leaving the facility and to come home and to be very present. When you are a law enforcement officer or a road officer, you don't really have that luxury. You are encouraged to always have your gun and your badge on you, even when you're off duty, because something could happen unexpectedly. That's the biggest difference that I noticed when we first changed was, as a corrections officer, it's just a job and it stays at work. As a law enforcement officer, it's a life. It's a whole lifestyle, and your whole family is involved. Difference number 2. My anxiety levels were much higher, and here's why. Working in the jail, it is a very controlled facility. Every person that comes or goes is searched. Every person that brings any sort of item in, the items are searched. They're very, very cautious about everything entering and exiting that building. So, are there still things that slip through the cracks? Absolutely. Are there still situations that are incredibly dangerous? Absolutely. You are surrounded by a ton of people who have already shown that they're willing to commit crimes. So there's potential for a lot of danger there, because there are more prisoners than there are corrections officers. However, you kind of know what you're walking into. As a corrections officer, that's your place. That's more your domain. You're comfortable there. You know what to expect. You know where things are located. You've got a little more control over the situation because it is contained. When you're on the road, you literally have no idea what you're walking into. You don't know if you pull this guy over for not using his blinker properly, is he going to pull out a gun? You don't know when you knock on a door for a welfare check what's happening behind those doors. You don't know what you're going to see. You don't know when you're walking down the street if the people over here are friendly or not. You don't know where the bad guy is. You have no idea what people are thinking, and that's where that anxiety heightens. And I saw a lot of that in my husband as well, that his anxieties were much higher when he first went to the road because of that unknown. Number 3, I noticed differences in my husband's behavior once he transferred over. So when we went to restaurants before, we didn't really have to worry about it because he wasn't constantly on alert. Now, when we go to restaurants, he's got to sit in a specific place. He's got to sit with his back to the wall. He's got to recognize where all of the exits are. He's very, very cautious about those kinds of things. There are specific places that he is willing to go within our state, and there are specific places that he's just not willing to go, and he doesn't want the kids and I to go either, because he recognizes the heightened level of crime in those areas, and he just doesn't want us to be put in danger. He also requested that I go and get my concealed carry permit, which I have had for years now, but that didn't occur until after he left the jail, because again, when he worked in the jail, it felt like it was kind of contained, versus now that he's on the road, you have no idea where the danger is going to come from ever. And so in order to protect myself and to be able to protect the kids, maybe when he's gone, he's at work or he's not with us or whatever, having that concealed carry permit gives both of us a lot of peace of mind, knowing that I have a way to protect myself and to protect our children should something come up. Today's video is sponsored by none other than Benji. If you guys haven't already, you gotta go check out Benji's boutique. We've got so many fun stickers for you to choose from. Happiness, hope, joy, kindness, things. Fantastic stuff. Police wife stickers. Well, police stickers. Thin blue line stickers. Fantastic fun stickers. ThatOtterMomma.com. And remember that 10% of all proceeds from sales at ThatOtterMomma.com go toward paying for people's groceries and doing kindness for other people. So every purchase you make goes toward making somebody else's life a little bit better. And we're back. Reason number 4 that being a CO is different than being an LEO. There's way more publicity on the road. When my husband dealt with critical incidents within the jail, it was very, very rare that the media ever got a hold of it because it doesn't affect the entire community. Whereas when crime happens on the street, and the media will always pick it up and people will know about it. So my husband ends up on TV fairly often, or he did when he worked at the larger city. It was exciting to be able to see him on TV, but it was also weird and a little bit scary because not everybody is friendly to police officers and their families. And it's scary to have his face out there and people to know what he looks like, because I don't want them to recognize him when we're out and about as a family and know, oh yeah, he's a cop. Now here's what the family looks like, and potentially, try to do not very nice things. Most of the time as a corrections officer, you're kind of incognito. Like when my husband worked there, they had a rule that you were not supposed to be driving home in your uniform because you look like a law enforcement officer because you are a police officer. They didn't want people to be driving their private vehicle in uniform and then something happens and people see, dude, there's a cop right there. Why isn't he doing anything about it? Well, because he's not trained for that situation, because he's not a road officer. So when my husband worked as a CO, he would actually put on like a button-up shirt over his uniform so that as he's driving down the road, people wouldn't know that he was a police officer. So it was much easier to fly under the radar and not have people know what he was or what he did for a living. And number 5. So I've noticed that it's more of a family feeling. Now there's the family unity thing that happens between corrections officers, but it's just not quite the same level. The officers feel that unity. The officers obviously are backing each other within the jail. The officers do a really good job of making sure that they have that cohesion and that connection that they need. But it doesn't really pull the families in. And again, it's because it's more of a regular job. You don't feel like you really need that support as much as a family of a corrections officer. At least I didn't. Whereas being a law enforcement officer, having the patrol car, having the more intense experiences that he's dealing with, having his face on the news on a regular basis, there's heightened anxiety and heightened fears and things like that with having him on the road and it being well known that he is a police officer. So for us, it was really important for us to find more of that family unity for all of us and not just the officer. Those are the biggest differences that I noticed between CO and LEO. Make sure you head over to thatottermama.com to grab some swag. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already, and have a fantastic day, everybody. That Otter Mama, signing out. Let's do some video.